Good morning, everyone. For the first talk of the day, we have Maksim Lin, an independent Flutter developer. In his talk, Building Companion Apps in Flutter, he'll take us through his latest project, building a companion app for an open-source hardware audio sequencer or sampler device. He'll also share the unique techniques and tools needed to create these apps, giving us all the knowledge we need to start our own hardware integration project. And if that's not exciting enough, there will be some surprises as well. Welcome, Max.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Thank you for being here nice and early on a Saturday morning. So, I'm Maksim Lin. Apart from other things that I do, I'm a GDG co-organizer down in Melbourne, hence the T-shirt, as well as being GDE in Flutter and Dart. So, I've been an independent mobile developer for about half my career, or a bit over half my career. So since about 2011, I've been doing Android apps, and more recently, I've been doing Flutter development, and more recently, other things, which I'll talk about soon. So I've got a lot to cover, and I'll try and talk not too fast, but I have to talk reasonably fast to get through it all, because I want to talk about what companion apps are. I want to give you some examples, so give some flesh on the bones of what I'm really talking about. Cover some considerations if you're going to be building companion apps, or if you just want to know like some of the things involved in making a companion app. What is a companion app? We'll cover that in a sec. Talk about the other side of the coin, the hardware that goes along with companion apps, and hopefully I'll have time for a demo, and even more hopefully, if the demo gods smile, it will work. So, companion apps, what are they? Well, I figure it's 2024. It's basically compulsory if you're at a Google event to mention AI at least 10 to 20 times. Unfortunately, I can't, so I'll at least do it once. And so I asked our robotic friend, what is a mobile companion app? And Gemini actually gave a pretty good answer. So it was a very detailed answer. That's what we get with generative AI, like very detailed responses, sometimes useful detailed responses, and this time it was pretty reasonable, as you can see. I won't go over all of these, like what it called key characters, like 4 bullet points of just key characteristics, but from my point of view, a companion app is something that provides an alternative or even a primary user interface for a specific hardware device, or maybe a small family of hardware devices, but usually it's a specific app for a specific device. Now, to give some concrete examples might help you to understand, because even that is quite a generic thing, like a specific device, specific app. What? Well, the first one I'd like to give you as an example is the very first companion app that I did, like roughly a decade ago now or so, and it was an app. I only did the Android version, because back then I was only doing Android apps, for a thing called the Color Cube, which I'll just reach over and grab. I have one of the very original first-gen models here, so probably a collector's item by now. And amazingly, after 10 years, it still works. I might demo it later if we have time. So its job in life was to accurately scan whatever color you put underneath its little sensor. You just press the button, it scans it. But that's the whole interface. It's just a button and a flashing LED to tell you it's doing something. But there was a lot of functionality that the startup that was making it wanted to have, because the whole point was to have it display the color that you're scanning, match it to other colors, to various paint schemes, to various colors and paint libraries, all of that. You can't fit on something like this. So hence the need for a companion app. The companion app connected to it and provided all that extra functionality and all that extra user interface that a user of the Color Cube would want. How about another example? Maybe something a bit, because this is a little bit esoteric unless you're an interior designer. How about something a bit more familiar in our lives? Headphones. I think most of us have headphones or earphones or earbuds. So an app that I built a bit more recently, still a number of years ago now, it was actually the first commercial Flutter app I did, was the companion app for the newer headphones. Possibly you may or may not have seen these around. They had big advertising campaigns maybe 3-4 years ago, pre-COVID. They were sold all over the place. They did Kickstarters. They even sold them at JB Hi-Fi. I took the screenshot because that was like when they were selling out. This was the original model, and obviously they were clearing them out. Like, as you can see, these were not cheap. They were quite high-end device because the intention was they were created in part by audiologists who came up with a way of playing sound out of these headphones into your ears that would then sense your hearing and calibrate the headphone with a audio profile, like an equalizer profile, to match your hearing, to get the most out of basically what your ears were capable of listening to. And again, like very minimal interface, just 2 buttons on either side of the headphone, as you can see the little finger pressing it. Everything else had to be done by the app, so there was a lot of functionality in the app. It provided a whole wizard-like experience to walk you through running the calibration, then it would let you change all these settings. It had all the usual customization for the different functions of the buttons, like taking calls, controlling playback, as well as managing various profiles. These ones you probably didn't want to share with people because I didn't bring my pair along because they're a bit bulky, and also getting on a bit of age, so I didn't want to break them because, you can't get them anymore. But they had these little things that poked into your ears, like earphones within headphones. So you probably wouldn't share them around, but you could have multiple audio profiles, possibly if you were sharing the same device, like an iPad, between multiple people with headphones, like in the studio. Anyway, lots of functionality, again, had to be in the app because the headphones did a lot, but they couldn't provide that user interface. Okay. So hopefully that's a much more complex example of what a device that has a companion app is. Finally, a third example I thought I'd provide, not an app that I've built myself, but one, as you can see by the dirty, slightly spiderweb encrusted photo, is the EV charger that sits next to my garage. And this is an app that I, as an end user, use every day, a companion app that I use pretty much on a daily basis. Again, the charger itself, while it has a screen, so it's got a bit of an output of the user interface, 0 buttons, 0 switches. There is no way to do any sort of input into it. Everything is done via the companion app, which basically, again, makes it very important for me, the end user, because if I want to vary the charge that's been delivered, see the historical data, maybe set up timing schedules, all of that has to be done through the companion app. So as you can see, 3 very different devices, all different form factors, but all requiring a companion app of some sort to provide the user with all the functionality the device can do, but can't provide a user interface on its own. Now that leads me to another very key part of companion apps, which is connectivity. Connectivity is probably the other key differentiator of what makes up a companion app, because you probably realize the whole point is that the companion app has to connect to the device it's the companion of to be able to provide its functionality. And essentially there are 3 ways: Wi-Fi, Bluetooth low energy, well, mostly low energy, but Bluetooth, and USB. The reason USB is in different color is because I'm going to cover the first 2 now. USB I'm going to leave till a little bit later to get to. Now, Wi-Fi, that's what the Jet Charger has. Its connectivity is via Wi-Fi, not Bluetooth, but that you might think that's nice and easy, great, no hassles for me, but as the app developer, usually if you have to deal with building a companion app for a device which is Wi-Fi only, you're going to have to deal with the fact that you have to get that device onto someone's Wi-Fi. And possibly for anyone who's had to deal with Google Home, Google Nests, maybe there's 1 or 2 of you who've got them in your house, or maybe other devices which are Wi-Fi only and have to be on your Wi-Fi, and yet don't have any controls to get them onto your Wi-Fi. So there's always this dance that somehow the companion app developer has to deal with, of getting the credentials and the Wi-Fi name that you're getting the device to connect to in your home into the device. But it's not on the Wi-Fi network. How do you talk to it? Hence, the usual routine is there's this little dance of the device comes up as an access point. You have to then disconnect your phone or tablet from your normal Wi-Fi, connect to its Wi-Fi as the access point, fill in the details. It then reboots as a client, tries to connect to your network. Hopefully you gave it the right credentials and it connects to your Wi-Fi network. If you didn't, then it usually sits there for a long time, decides no, the user stuffed up, have to go back into access point mode. You have to disconnect again from your normal home Wi-Fi, connect to it, do the whole thing over again. Anyway, real pain in the butt. But that's what Wi-Fi gives you in terms of setup. In terms of connectivity, Wi-Fi is brilliant. It's high bandwidth, it's quite reliable, good distances. There's a lot going for it, except for the whole hassle of the setup. Bluetooth low energy. Well, that's what these two devices are. The newer headphones also use Bluetooth Classic for audio because BLE, for all its niceties of being a simple, low-powered protocol, one thing it can't do is high bandwidth. That's the whole point of the low energy bit. It sends very small bits of data backwards and forwards. So that's perfect for the Cube, which just has to send little snippets of data for the colors that it scanned. Not so much for headphones. So hence, headphones normally have a combination of both Bluetooth low energy for configuration purposes or earphones, and then they use Bluetooth Classic, the original Bluetooth protocol for the actual audio streaming, which low energy can't handle. That goes for everything from high-end ones to these El Cheapo ones I have in my pocket, everything in between, it's all pretty much the same. BLE is really easy to deal with. None of those connection hassles I talked about with Wi-Fi, because this was thought about from the very beginning of when people designed Bluetooth and Bluetooth low energy, the whole pairing thing. BLE, if you ever need to use it, and you may have noticed with some devices, you don't even need to do pairing. For instance, the Color Cube, that gets you to pair it, but that was a design decision that I somewhat argued with the people who came up with that, because there was no need for it. You could have just had the mobile app do the reading straight from the device. There's no need for pairing. That was more like a designer's UI decision or UX decision. So if you're going to build a device, if you're going to build a companion app for a device that uses BLE, the great thing is, we're at a Google conference. I'm going to talk about things from the Android point of view. Native Android, there are wonderful apps from a company called Nordic, which makes a lot of the chips that are in these devices, that does the Bluetooth functionality. Those three basically will do almost everything you want. They're a fantastic ecosystem to do anything you need to do when you're developing for BLE. That should be your go-to. But this is a Flutter talk. You might be here because you're thinking about doing a Flutter companion app, and so might need to talk to a device via BLE in Flutter. And to be honest, most companion apps deal with devices that use Bluetooth low energy. And for that, Flutter has a fantastic package. Flutter, it used to be just Flutter Blue, then it became Flutter Blue Plus because it was handed over to a new team of people to maintain. It's very well maintained. I took the screenshot a couple of days ago. Look at that, published. Last version was published 8 days ago. It's very well maintained. It's very popular, as you can see by the thumbs up, and it's very widely used. So I haven't used it extensively recently, but I used its precursor quite a bit on previous projects, worked really well. However, there is one proviso. It's right there on the README for the library, and it's what I just mentioned previously. BLE is for low bandwidth use, just a few bytes backwards and forwards, for things like streaming audio for headphones or earbuds or whatever, and also older style devices. We store them every day, mice, keyboards, gamepads. They were all built for what's called Bluetooth Classic now. Originally, it was just Bluetooth before BLE came along. BLE was a refinement, a new kind of like innovation, if you like, or a new variation of Bluetooth. In fact, it shared very little with the original Bluetooth, hence now why people call the original Bluetooth spec Bluetooth Classic, and it's still needed for the kind of high bandwidth applications that things like earphones and headphones require, and that's the proviso of using this library, is that it's not covered by BLE, so you need another way of dealing with that. Luckily, you usually don't have to worry about that because your operating system, Android, iOS, will deal with that for you. Usually all the configuration, all the customization on the device that the app has to deal with is via BLE, so the library in Flutter has you covered. I'll do a very quick sidetrack, if you like, or tangent, and talk about the hardware, the things that if you're building, even though most people here will probably be interested in the mobile side of things, the hardware, the things that you're going to talk to with your app is just as important in my view. In some ways, it's possibly even more important because it's the thing that is actually doing the job. And, oh, pardon me, that's my little timer. And here I just want to advocate for a fantastic open source project called Espruino, which lets you write code in JavaScript. So basically, I think everyone can hack together a bit of JavaScript these days, but it lets you run that JavaScript on these embedded devices, or more specifically, these embedded devices. So these are all based on one of those Nordic chips. This is one of the Espruino Kickstarter products. It's basically the Espruino chip or chipset inside a watch device. These are fitness trackers which use the same chip. They weren't part of the Espruino project, but they've been made part of the ecosystem because someone found a fairly easy way to get Espruino, the JavaScript, open source JavaScript license library, running on these devices. So they make for fantastic little prototyping things to have something for your mobile app to talk to. Or if you want to just experiment with writing some sort of basic mobile app in Flutter and you need something to talk to, these are fantastic. You put your own little bit of functionality on here, or even use the default functionality like the step counters, the heart rate monitors, which aren't accurate, or too accurate. And then your Flutter mobile app has something that it actually can talk to. Spoiler alert, these will be given away at the end of the talk for the best questions. And some of them are dirt cheap. So if you want to get into experimenting with this, it's not very expensive. Like one of those little devices is just $10 on AliExpress. This is even a couple of years ago. And there's some great documentation on how to set it all up if you need to, but it gives you a really nice, easy way to get into experimenting and playing with something that's a reasonably like end product device, not just like a bare little circuit board that is meant for engineers to develop a new device with, not something for end consumers. And finally, back to that USB bit. So much less common than Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, you can actually use USB to connect one of these devices to your phone or computer. Now, most of the time, that's used by developers to do initial development and debugging. But in the case of this project called the Pico Tracker, which is currently what I'm actually working on, we use it also for end user use, if you like. So what you can do is you can plug in the Pico Tracker via USB and have the companion app. At the moment, it's a desktop app, soon to be a web app, written in Flutter, provide functionality that's complementary to the device because, as I'll show you in a second, the Pico Tracker, I should explain what it is. It's like basically an old school way of making electronic music. For those of you who remember the old days of 16-bit Amiga 500s, maybe not so many here, but back in the old days when computers were quite limited, this was the way to make music. Was it looked like a bit like a spreadsheet, and this is essentially that same sort of retro music making in nice handheld form factor you can take with you to the beach or on the bus. But it has a reasonable number of keys. It has a fairly decent screen. So you're thinking, why does it need a companion app? Well, like I said, it's very useful to have the companion app as a developer of the device. And the fact that it's an open source device means that's not just myself and my partner who are developing it. It's a lot of other people who are contributing to the open source project. But it also means that it can be useful to end users because one of the things that people like to do who are in this little electronic music niche is publish YouTube videos of themselves composing and then playing back music on this and similar devices. And if you have a companion app, what it means is that you can much more easily make a cool little video of yourself using the device. And that brings me to what I'd like to demo. So here, like, I might have a chance later to show you a few details of the Flutter code, but this is basically the Flutter companion app for the Pico tracker. I'll just start it running. Hopefully the gods are kind to me. As you can see, I'm running it straight from VS Code. So this is like the, not even the experimental, this is like the main branch, or like a, sorry, experimental fork of the main branch. So I have my fingers crossed that when I plug this in, and turn it on. Yes, okay, so what you couldn't see there was it turning on. It boots very quickly, but hopefully you can, oh dear. Like I said, I'm really praying to the demo gods here. Okay, very experimental version, but hopefully, oh no, lost the connection. Sorry, I'm just going to have to restart it. Oh no, it didn't lose connection. It's just uncaught exceptions off. Don't worry about the exceptions. Let's try that again. Might just need to restart it. Dear me, I really didn't make enough sacrifices to the gods to. Let's see if I can get it working. Okay. There we go. Okay, so yeah, it's going to be a bit difficult for me to show you like me control it, but as you can see, like as I move the arrow keys, I can navigate through the different menu screens. So basically, whatever's happening here is reflected on the remote user interface, or the mirrored user interface, if you like, on the device. Which means when I'm using, like, for those of you who haven't tried, trying to create nice videos of devices with backlit screens, unless you've got a very nicely dimly lit room, is quite tricky. And people on YouTube tend to like nice videos. So having a way of remotely mirroring the UI means you can use a nice video capture program of your choice to capture the UI. So even though while you're editing and moving around the user interface, you can have a nice video capture of the screen for your future production of your YouTube video of choice. To try and give you a sense of what it sounds like, it's not quite chiptune music for those of you who have heard of it, although some people use them to make that, but it's essentially kind of like a retro style of electronic music production. Like I can show you one of the elements in it. Is that it's basically, let me find something that's maybe a bit more interesting. Okay, so for instance, this is just a phrase for those of you who know any sort of music theory of two F2 notes, and they are playing a sample instrument which has a few settings here to do. Like, there's not much changes here, maybe a bit of filter settings. But if I jump back, hopefully I can. This is not what track I wrote either, so I'm useless at actually music. But I'll just. So as you can see, as it plays back, what you're seeing is the notes that are being played back on each of the 8 channels, although only basically 4 channels are used in this composition. And what it's going through and doing is basically for each of those tracks in tune, playing back whatever notes with whatever samples that have been set for them, and then whatever effects, filters, so forth, bit crush, whatever it was that was applied to them. So that basically hopefully gives you an idea of a much more, I guess, niche application of a companion app. In this case, because it's via USB, you have to actually, and because I'm doing it as a Flutter app, you have to deal with the vagaries of different interfaces for USB, and in this case for serial data over USB that each operating system provides. It's different on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. For those of you who don't know, Flutter supports all three. And then it's different again on Android, and as far as I know, not available on iOS, or not easily available on iOS. So if you're a cross-platform developer with Flutter, that makes life a bit trickier. And it's even more trickier because, like I said, the intention is for me to ship this as a web app so that people don't have to install anything. Doesn't matter which operating system we're on, as long as I've got Chrome, which has a protocol called Web Serial, which means that serial devices like this over USB can talk to basically any JavaScript app running in the browser. With that, I will switch back to my presentation. I will say, in the words of one of my favorite YouTubers, share the love, share the knowledge. Knowledge is power, peace. And hopefully I can get in maybe one or two questions. And if anyone is willing to ask a question and earn themselves a little device, they might be able to do a bit of mobile app development and JavaScript embedded hacking on their own. Thank you.
Any questions?
Go, Cedric. I know you want one. I know you want one.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Do you actually produce your music yourself?
I have been known to publish one or two very basic tracks. I actually got into this whole thing because during lockdowns, I got suggested by a person I follow from the Dart team who told me, like when I said he was making amazing music, he goes, anyone can learn, why don't you learn? And as a middle-aged man who didn't even know what a chord was, I went, yeah, how hard could it be? And a few years later, I have done a lot of engineering work on musical things, but produced very mediocre music tracks.
Thank you.
That was actually one of the questions that I wanted to ask you as well. Okay. Any more questions?
Yes.
Maybe I missed it. Could you explain that Pico tracker just a little bit more in terms of, is it like a kind of a music box in that you put like, if you think about like a manual music box where you put like a scroll or something in it and winds it round and it plays something. It's not like a synthesizer where you click buttons and it plays a sound. It's something you program in and then it will play like the whole piece of music.
Actually, yeah, sorry, I skipped over that because I wasn't sure how much people want to know about a very niche topic like that. It's actually what's called a groove box. It's currently sample-based in that, like, if you load samples, so you could be samples of a piano, samples of a drum, samples of a flute, and it'll play back those samples, and you can choose which notes of that, like which note each sample is used to play back, but we're actually just about to add 2 synthesizers to it. But essentially, in some ways, the samples are like a synthesizer. It's just a limited synthesizer. So if you've used keyboard synthesizers or anything like that, it's very similar. If you've used anything like GarageBand, Pro Logic, Ableton, all those kind of like modern digital audio workstations, it's sort of like a cut-down version of that in a box, but from the days when computers weren't powerful enough to run something like Pro Logic or Ableton. So that was actually the precursor to all those programs in the days of like Amigas and Atari STs and early DOS PCs. But these days, basically, you can with something like this, you can compose a song which has 8 simultaneous monophonic, like one note at a time tracks, that plays back any instrument you can record a sample of. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, you mentioned Flutter on the web. I looked at Flutter on the web some time back, and it seemed quite early days. So yes. You seem quite, okay, let's put it on the web. It's all going to work. So
Flutter Web has matured a lot over the last couple of years especially. One not so good thing is that some of the APIs have changed in the last release, but that was for a good reason because now Flutter Web supports WebAssembly, which means you can do a lot more in terms of the kind of apps you can run. And it's also changed in some subtle ways in terms of how you deploy to the web, because they've previously had kind of two different ways of rendering. But I'd say apart from it making it slightly harder because there's no hot reload when you're doing development, in terms of deployment to web, Flutter Web is quite mature now and definitely production ready. I've worked on a couple of different commercial projects that have deployed to like Flutter apps to the web to tens, if not hundreds of thousands of users. So it's definitely production ready.
So they obviously reduced the size that they were downloading.
You do need to do some work to make sure it's still somewhat of an onus on the developers to make sure that you're careful about how you set up your app, but you can definitely make it quite reasonable. Like in today's terms, when like some sites will serve you multi-megabyte images, like as in PNGs or JPEGs, like the download size of a Flutter app is quite manageable, yeah, and is cached. So once users download it once, they're not downloading it again.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got one more question here.
Hello. Thank you for the talk. I'm kind of interested in the Jet Charger. What kind of function you build into the companion app in the Jet Charge? Do you like some sort of monitoring the battery life or?
Okay, so I may have not emphasized enough. Jet Charge is the one example that I presented that I didn't. I know it is a Flutter app because one of my co-GDG organizers is the one who did write and maintains it. But I don't work on it personally. But in terms of like your question, I think you're asking whether it can monitor the car's charge. Not especially. Most chargers, I think there is a part of the spec that allows for it, but I think most chargers don't actually make very much use of it. So, for instance, I have a companion app for my car, which does show me, for instance, like the car's charge and various other things, like whether it's unlocked, its position, like whether certain bits and pieces are turned on and off. And it, for instance, shows the charge, or when it's charging, how long it's got to go to get to a certain percentage. But that's in the car's companion app, not in the charger's companion app.
Right. So companion
yes.
app have different type, is it? It's just the concept is quite new to me.
Okay, so companion apps are usually for, like I said, for a specific device, and that goes for anything from something like this, or like, Bluetooth earbuds, all the way to a car. Like I said, my car has a companion app. It's not a Tesla, but I believe the Teslas have one as well. But like mine has a companion app, just like it was a pair of earphones. It's actually quite minimal. In some ways, it's actually got less functionality than the companion app for my earbuds. But yeah, so companion apps are essentially apps that are designed to talk to a device, whether it's a charger, a set of earbuds, a cube, or a car. They're all apps that talk to one particular device or type of device. That would be the characterization I'd give of a companion app. So in terms of the car's companion app, it talks to the car via the cloud over Wi-Fi, which is a bit annoying. Most companion apps that you'll use, or hopefully if some of you are developing Android or Flutter apps, or iOS apps even, you will normally use Bluetooth to talk to them. Can I just show a quick show of hands? Who is a developer of Android, Flutter, iOS? Oh, awesome. So hopefully, if you haven't built a companion app, you will get to do one, or even build one for yourselves. It's a lot of fun. It's very rewarding having an app that actually controls something tangible, something physical, not just some pixels on the screen. Do we have time for one more question? Awesome.
What's the API like from the device? I mean, it must kind of give you that information to receive in a fairly standardized way.
in terms of, I'll maybe cover that specifically for BLE. BLE is a really nice protocol, probably the nicest one I've used. It has a set, basically it has services and characteristics, and there's a standardized set of services for very common things. So like step counter on a watch, heart rate monitor, a bicycle's like cadence meter, and a few other things that are very bog standard. Battery, like the battery on any device. That's a standard service that's defined in the Bluetooth spec, so it's very easy to get that data off any device that you want to try and talk to. A lot of other devices, for instance, like the Neura one, have very custom BLE. I can't even talk about it because I had to sign an NDA when I worked on it. Very custom BLE implementation. They're essentially, their services and characteristics could be considered what they consider a trade secret. So unless you know specifically what all the service and characteristics IDs are and what they do, you're going to have very little chance of talking to it. You basically have to reverse engineer it. But for instance, its battery life you'll be able to get because that's using something that's defined in the Bluetooth standard. You can just go look that up on the Bluetooth specs website. Hopefully that helps. Oh, I think there's one more up the back if we have time.
Morning. I have a question like, what's the scope of AI integration with the companion apps?
It's really up to the individual app developers. I think it's still very early days. I haven't seen much in the way of companion apps using AI a lot. For instance, there are some that have used, for instance, my Sony headphones have like integration with Google Assistant. I think Google pushed that to a number of manufacturers, so Sony, I think Samsung does the same thing. But outside of that, there's not really a lot that I've seen happening so far. Having said that, there's basically AI is everywhere. Can't run away from it fast enough. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the near future a lot of the companion apps will start bundling some sort of AI functionality in. The thing is, because you're dealing with very limited devices, it will mostly be on your phone or on your tablet, not on these devices. Having said that, the Sprino watch actually has TF Lite, so it can actually run very basic models on device. So if anyone's interested in experimenting with that, that's probably a good place to start because there's not many low-powered devices that have that functionality and that are open, basically fully documented with a very nice simple JavaScript API to let you use them. So that's probably where things are going in the near future, but not much at the moment. That's it.
I heard that was a giveaway.
Yes, so I think... Yeah, oh.
About the Bluetooth plug-in,
Yes.
you mentioned in the slide.
Yes.
Is it a Flutter plug-in or a VS Code plugin?
No, it's a Flutter plugin, a Flutter package. Yep. So, and it supports, I think, all like the main operating systems, iOS, Android, Mac OS. Yeah. It's not VS Code. It's specifically for Flutter.
Thanks.
Cool. Thank you. Yes. So I think the person who asked about AI gets the device that can do. AI. So here you go. Right. Your question about standardization. So hopefully this is our standardized. So hopefully you'll be able to figure it out. Come see me. I'll give you some links to get started. And just trying to remember.
I actually didn't ask one. I was going to ask you one actually.
Oh,
but it's all right.
Who asked? Someone over here asked. You asked. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your question about the development. So, thank you very much for everyone for coming. I really appreciate you all coming on an early Saturday morning. Thank you again.